How many of us have created content? You're not getting the type of reach, you're not getting the type of engagement that you wish you had from that, especially with your target audience. I'm not one that believes at any moment that we need to be like Joe Rogan, have the top podcast in the world. That's not what this is about for me. This is more so like, how do I engage the people that I care about serving the most? And what's most interesting. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Joe Lemon, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's Fresh Start Friday. So last week, we were breaking down Lululemon's strategy that they're still using now, but they were doubling down on this when they first got started. And they really took a totally different approach to building up communities in person by leveraging their stores as like local gyms. And they partnered up even with like micro influencers, people that had less than 5,000 followers, but were just like known in their community. And I thought this was a great strategy because it allowed them to not just go from this broad reach approach to really going deep and going narrow into their target audience. So they will work with running coaches who had clubs that met up every second Wednesday with like a group of 30 to 40 people. And they would encourage them to meet at the store first before they went on a long run. Super great way to go about making sure that you had deep engagement with your community in person. So check out that episode there. But today, I really want to get into the importance of doing this online as well. Because with so many tools out there, why in the world would you go about, for one, posting content just for the sake of posting content and keeping on other people's platform? And two, why would you not use the leverage of that content to help you scale your message? That's the one thing that when you meet in person, I think that's the best. I love meeting in person the most. And nothing beats going belly to belly, right? But with that, to me, I think that when you do it online, the scale that you can have when you do it with the right messaging in the right way, always have that message working for you, opposed to you have to show for that next event to be able to have that type of collaboration and conversation. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this Fresh Start Friday. We're going to dive into the power of UGC. That's user generated content. All right, let's get into it. Across a good document done by Tent, I believe the company is, but they had a whole state of social and user generated content. And this is something that I think that if you're thinking about how to market today, like no question, people are going to social and they're using that as their main search engine, even more so than Google, I would say. Chat GPT, going to give them a good run for it at as well. But when people are looking for things, they go to YouTube. Even though Google's still number one, of course, but YouTube is the number two search engine. So for people that are making content, it makes sense to be on these platforms for your customers' sake, so they can go about finding you easier. So that's, I'm kind of stating some obvious things here, but I'm setting the actual pace because when it comes to making content, there's a couple of big challenges. One, budget. Content's not cheap. It takes time, takes energy to really kind of get those put together well and produced. Time to do it, finding, time and talent, I would say, having the right people that have the right conversations they could bring that are going to be meaningful to your audience, and then having time for that talent to go do it versus doing some other activities. That's constantly one of the things I'm balancing out, and I have a day that I do this, so I could try to pack all my content in one day to help me save some of the time. But this one, I think, is going to be the most important for this UGC conversation, which is engagement. Because how many of us have created content? You're not getting the type of reach, you're not getting the type of engagement that you wish you had from that, especially with your target audience. I'm not one that believes at any moment that we need to be like Joe Rogan, have the top podcast in the world. That's not what this is about for me. This is more so like, how do I engage the people that I care about serving the most? And what's most interesting to them, and even using this a little bit as like a good research tool for me as well. Because when you're engaging and you're coming in with that curiosity mindset, you're looking for opportunities and ways to really help serve people. Man, you start learning so much about the industry that you probably didn't have any insight on, and that just even opens up more opportunities for how you can have better and more engaging content. So it's like a nice flywheel effect that happens. So things to think about when we're doing this, things that give us weak engagement. If we go with the normal stock photos and just the things that are, brand, like things that are like curated and really staged is a good way to say it. I mean, that obviously turns people off. And I think that if you're able to see my screen, if you're on YouTube, you can check this out. But if you're listening on a podcast, I'll have a link in the actual show notes. You can go download this actual paper here as well. But they actually rank the type of content based off of trustworthy. And the reason why, of course, having trustworthy content is the most important, because we all want to see something happen from the content. You want to see some engagement. You want to see them join your newsletter. You want to see them, fill out a form to say, contact me. I want to learn more about your product or your service. But they're not going to do that if they think that you're a scammer or they think that you don't know what you're talking about. So having trustworthy content, I think, is is a really important piece of this. And they rank authentic UGC, user generated content, as the most important, right? So one thing I've been doing, and I'll share a clip from my online community. I put this on Mighty Networks because I want to take them away from LinkedIn, away from Facebook, and I want to control these actual conversations and have a way that I can get my message out, because LinkedIn only probably gives it to 2% of the people that are actually following me. So I really want to have this in my own community. This is something that we've been doing to get user-generated content as well. So every second Wednesday, we host this multimodal AMA. Just ask me anything. But we talk about these different approaches that people are using in physical medicine to help improve their patients' mobility, right? So now, obviously, I'm with Elevation Medical. We have the shockwave, so lots of my users are in there. But they also bring a lot of other people from from different communities, and they're not even customers. They're not thinking about becoming customers sometime. But it's still great cross-pollination because it helps out my clients do their jobs better. So that's the value add for people in my community. And this is one of the biggest challenges of figuring out when you're launching your own community, how do you go about getting this value add? Like Lululemon made it so their store was a great meeting location. They could work out there for these micro-influencers that might not have their own facility or might want to do things at a different location and be paired up with a larger brand. And that was one of their plays that they had for their user base. And that's how they gained a little bit of, trust and gave them reasons to kind of show up at the store. So for my online community, it's about helping them learn better. It's helping them, giving them more access to more people, helping them maximize the actual device that they invested in. It's those type of things, right? That we're doing inside Nearsite Health, which is soon going to be flipped over to a totally different name, but I'll save that for a different announcement. But so user generated content, you'll see a clip of this coming up after this quick little show in about 2 more minutes here. But next are creators, people that are just creating content, people that are bringing value on these different platforms. Think about, YouTubers or Instagram influencers, but there's a difference between influencers and creators too. Let me kind of separate those two, because creators are somewhat like a third party entity that's doing it without any incentive. They're not getting paid basically to go about promoting the content. And influencers really are somebody that is getting paid. Like, that they're on a paid commercial. They're telling you, hey, I'm sponsored by this, powered by this group, whatever. Those are influencers, right? So I'm a creator, right, when it comes to LinkedIn content, but I'm also an influencer for Elevation Medical, right? Because I get paid to talk about the shockwave. So, you can wear multiple caps, but, when it comes to what you're bringing to the table, understanding that creators have more trustworthy content opposed to influencers, because people don't like to be sold to. Let's just be clear. And there's even a really good stat I saw is that 75% of consumers claim that they know when they are being advertised to. And so if you might as well make it obvious if you're going to do it, but you can see this trustworthy scale. And for those that are just listening, it goes from authentic user generated content. And so that's number 1, authentic user generated content. Number 2, the creators. And then 3, branded content. That's the podcasts that are labeled, the blog posts. And then 4, influencers, paid ads and things that says sponsored by. And then the weakest one is the stage user generated content. Because when we stage it, that's even, to me, shows some of it could put the brand in the worst light sometime, because that people are trying to put on for you. So with that being said, hopefully you guys got some value out of this Fresh Start Friday. Please let me know. Drop some comments on the actual LinkedIn post if you're checking out there, or go over to the actual podcast, leave an actual rating, subscribe. And with that being said, I want to share a clip from our multimodal AMA just to give you some insight into some of how real and how raw some of these conversations are, but I think it's much needed. And I'm not going to share the whole thing. These are things that go on for at least an hour. I'm going to give you about a good 20 minutes or so just to give you an idea of some of these conversations. And if you're in the physical medicine space, or if you're in medical device sales and you want to have access to this, please go over to Join Nearsite. That's the current URL. We might be changing that up pretty soon, but go over there and subscribe to the Fresh Start Friday newsletter so you can stay posted on all this type of information in the future. With that being said, let's dive into this past week's AMA. All right. Hopefully you guys enjoy.
That's muscle tension, hypertonic tissues. That's why people can't move as well unless they have bony growth and spurring. But what you're trying to do then in terms of good interventional strategies is find an incredible PT, Grant, support all of the ligament structures with autologous hormones and growth factors, give people some time to heal. And hopefully that's a decent overview, Grant. Is that what you want?
Thank you. Yes. Dr. Tucker, you had a question also?
I do. So Dr. Wood, thanks so much for being on and being a part of this tonight. We really appreciate it. So in my practice, my top 2 or 3 for the hip conditions that I see is OA and gluteal tendonitis, and probably, that high, hamstring attachment tears. So I'm curious, like, any experience with, ozone injections, or what do you inject in when there is OA and we're trying to see if we can stave off, a hip replacement, or you could just see, I'm trying to slow down the degeneration and then hopefully repair, as we've seen, if you've been in practice long enough, that you can actually make some OA changes.
Yeah, no, I've been doing injections for 8 straight years. I've done nothing else 100% of my practice. So I've probably put stem cells in 500 hips.
Nice.
I did one this morning. So in terms of ozone specifically, I think ozone is a great pain modulator. That's and there is some level B evidence to support downregulating inflammation. So specifically in some hot arthritic joints, you can see that modulation. Personally, I don't use ozone, and I could go on a whole roll on why and I do and don't. It's to be honest with you, I measure success in treatment in terms of a spectrum, right? And I'm going to be blunt about this. On the left side of the spectrum, you kill somebody, that's shitty medicine. On the right side, you're Jesus Christ, and you put your hand on them and they're cured, right? All of us are somewhere trying to be in the middle. We're trying not to harm. We're trying to be Jesus Christ. And in terms of that spectrum, then there is a myriad of things that work in terms of fixing things. In my personal opinion, and this is just my opinion, so take it for what it is, I believe that ozone is a lesser option in terms of long-standing outcomes, and there is a lot more evidence in other interventional strategies that show better long-standing, long-term outcomes, and the research supports it slightly better. So when I reach for things, what I'm trying to do is reach for the best tool that's also very highly researched, has maybe a level 2A or a level 2, like gold standard meta-analysis things that are just, slightly more research oriented. And I have plenty of friends who do ozone and rave about it all the time. I know the outcomes. I have patients that constantly come in with great success stories from ozone. I just don't use it in my clinical practice. But in terms of like treating high hamstring tears and things like this, we just reach for what on that spectrum of what I would consider very high-end medicine, stem cells or PRP, because in the research, there's better outcomes long-standing with the use of those things. And also, there's a lot of inter-practitioner variability in autologous tissues, right? So what one practitioner's PRP is versus another is very different, right? We have a lab. We have a really incredible lab. So everything that we make is I have high dollar equipment. I've got a cell counter right there. I count all my platelets. So we're tailoring our cell counts to ensure that we're meeting the minimum therapeutic threshold for research, right? If a 4 to 5 billion platelets is the minimum to create chondrogenic effects in a joint, in other words, growing cartilage in a joint, we have to meet that minimum threshold. And unfortunately, most practitioners who are using kit-based sciences are not reaching the minimum threshold for strong outcomes per the research, right? So that's the difference. And you have to have a high level lab and understand how to make these tissues in order to do that. Again, it's still the Wild West out there. And I don't really have that's not a short answer for what you're asking, but yeah, ozone, in my opinion, it's more on the lower end of the threshold for treating arthritis and especially for growing cartilage. However, it's a great medium for reducing pain and inflammation, right? We all know that. But if you want to actually grow cartilage, you need to step it up a bit. And then again, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a great point. And I look to this community as a collective to put our heads together to not just we're not just shockwave users, many of us are multimodal, therapists, and trying to think of it as a method, so that for us, it's just au natural to think, oh, we are going to have, injections, we're going to do our shockwave. And I think some of us are trying to sort out is the timing, and then taking it a step further. For my patients, look, if they're overweight, I have to be that doctor that says, hey, you've got to lose weight. And I'll go, I use I find the Mediterranean diet, is still my go-to diet, for the arthritic patients or inflammation. And then nutrition. I want to use the collective tonight. Like, what do you see? Should we be telling our patients, nutrition? Is it glucosamine? Is it chondroitin sulfate? Is it, collagen? Is it all of the above? Or are you seeing any specific recommendations? And I'd love everybody's input, either in the chat or put your hand up to help answer, like, what is our program for, the hip?
Do you want me to give you my answer on that?
I would love to hear your answer, please.
Okay.
Please.
We do not treat metabolic syndrome patients, period.
Yeah.
You want the short answer, that's it. So I'm 100% cash pay practice. My procedures are expensive. I have a standard of care that's extremely high. So if anybody comes into my clinic that's not meeting a basic metabolic flat line of health, they are going to go see their functional medicine practitioner, their naturopath, their nutritionist. They're going to go see their chiropractor. They're going to go see their PT. They're going to go see your acupuncture. I don't give a shit what it is. Get out of my clinic, go get healthy. And when you want to be investing this amount of money into your health, you need to be in my clinic at a baseline, right? And so for me, nutrition is paramount to success. How can you be healthy if you're putting McDonald's in your mouth? You can't. Are you smoking? No. I won't inject you. Done. You're too much of a risk for me. Is your BMI above a certain amount? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to treat you. How's your A1C? All of these things. Are you thyroid? Are you really thyroid? Is your TSH like terrible? Those things have to, for me specifically, when I'm treating somebody in terms of I'm trying to regenerate your tissue, just the baseline is like, can you heal? Really? I mean, that's it. That's what we're all sitting here trying to do. You've got a patient in front of you. They've got an issue. You're trying to get them better and heal them, right? If they're not already healthy and you're trying to do these very stimulatory things, such as like extracorporeal shockwave therapy or regenerative interventional strategies, those things don't work on people that can't heal themselves. I'm so busy anymore. I get to say, you're too fat, go away. And I don't put it like that. And don't take that the wrong way. But like if your A1C is 8 and your BMI is 37 and your blood pressure is 160 over 130 and you're on 3 medications, like there's no way in hell I'm going to touch you because I'm going to fail. And I've done this long enough that I know that. So I'm very terse. I'm cut and dry. I don't beat around the bush anymore. I just tell it how it is. Like, go see your nutritionist, go lose 30 pounds. Let's get you on metformin for a while. Let's see if we can put you on Ozempic for a bit. Drop that, get you insulin resistant get that insulin resistance gone. Do some IV therapy, nutritional therapies, get your cell counts, your micronutrients back up. Go see, do whatever you got to do. But yeah, we have the privilege of being popular and being able to be picky. And because of that, we're very exclusive on who we allow in and the people that once they're in here, we really try to give them high level care. So I think that maybe that's my opinion, but yeah, we do, once they're in here, typically most of my patients are working with a primary care functional medicine specialist already, and they're balancing everything from their hormones to their diet to their nutraceutical panels and any more. I literally I don't do that. We'll be moving in 6 months, and I did hire an IFM certified practitioner. So they're coming to do all our functional medicine, hormones, and everything. But for right now, I just refer literally every one of my patients is on some level of outside primary care that is like nutrition related, functional medicine related. They're either working with an ND or a DC nutritionist or an ND, which is naturopath, or they're working with a MDDO who's functional medicine trained. Okay.
Okay. That was
Hopefully
great.
that helps.
Yeah. And then do you want to walk us through like what your preference is or what you see who's getting better outcomes? Are they doing some shockwave therapy before you're injecting them? Are you having them have their shockwave therapy right after you inject them? What are you seeing as preferences and better outcomes?
I'm going to let that to Grant. That's his. I mean, he treats a lot of my regen patients. So he treated my wife. Do you think you can handle that? Can you comment on that?
I'll never feel confident, but I guess what I see is that so far I haven't messed up any of your patients in terms of, it doesn't seem like the shockwave has interfered with post-injection process at any stage. And so I think that's our major question in having you on and having anybody else from your field come on is,
I see.
Really what are the bounds there?
Okay.
And
I can answer
that. So yeah, we love your perspective because I'm on these every month and I don't feel 100% on any of it.
So this is it. When I put a needle in somebody, it's a cutting needle. I'm cutting through tissue to get a needle in there. And oftentimes 22 gauge doesn't seem that big of a needle, but it pushes a lot of things out of the way. I'm going to nick small veins and things like that on the way in. You're always going to have bruising. And then I'm injecting some pretty gnarly stuff sometimes. So people are going to be reasonably irritated afterwards. They're going to be sore. You can't just shove some stem cells in somebody's labrum and around the ischio and iliofemoral ligaments and expect them to walk away and not be uncomfortable. So I think it's like anything. I think what I would say is if I were a shockwave or any practitioner, PT, DC, massage, acupuncture, anytime that somebody's had trauma, you just have to look at it as trauma and give them enough time to at least get through the bruising, right? If your goal is to stimulate more bruising, that's one thing. But if your goal is to treat tissue that's in not an acute phase, but more or less subclinical aspect of things, I'm going to say that probably giving somebody a week to 10 days, maybe even 14 days, if they have bruising like visible ecchymosis, that's probably a good idea to stay away from those things. I think that's universal. We all learned that in school. If it's bruised, don't stick your elbow in it. If it's bruised, probably don't put ECW, extracorporeal shockwave, on it. But outside of that, like sky's the limit, man. Every time I do injections on people and they go to see Grant, it's like stepping it up from the family sedan to now you're driving the Mercedes. You're getting just that much better quality of care and you're healing faster and you're creating more effective change just down the road. People's tendons heal quicker. They get stronger faster. They feel better earlier, right? And I think that's what everybody's goal is, to try to provide some level of interventional strategy that gives people a rapid response and a rapid healing time. And we all know it's not McDonald's. There is no Happy Meal and toy at the end of the drive-through. This is a cellular changing process, so it takes months. But ECWS, anytime along the path is fine. Even leading up to these, I mean, the way that if you go back a couple slides to the one where you had the lipid bilayer, do that for me, will you? That slide right there. Down at the bottom, it says activation of stem cell proliferation and tissue regeneration, right? That's what that thing does. What if I supplement those tissues with stem cells? What if I put hormones that are stimulating tissue regeneration? It's just doubling down on really great stuff. So that's the way I view this. This therapy is in literally every high-end regen ortho clinic in the country right now, and there's a reason for it because it works and it gets people better. And when you're using it, even pre-injection therapies, giving it a week or so off after an injection, just to get through the basic bruising and acute phase of the injury from injections, and picking back up afterwards. Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay.
I feel like we're covering so many bases just in these comments here.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
At this point, have anything to add?
I do, potentially. Hello, I'm a veterinarian. And so I treat largely arthritis patients. And so I've used shockwave an awfully long time, and I've used it with my regenerative medicine. See what you think of this. Of course, I don't get to see dogs until they're having major problems. So it means that both my physical therapists are telling me, like, we have a hard time stretching this patient. We have a hard time moving the tissues on this patient, because dogs don't love that. People don't love that, but they do it, right? I find that shockwave as a myofascial tool, and also to relieve all of that muscle spasm. If I do that before I do anything to the joints, makes a huge difference. If I can get them a little better flexibility and comfort, then when I put regenerative medicine in there, I'm finding that they come off of their big pain drugs much easier, and they're able to do their active stretches better. So I'm with you. So I usually shockwave them first, if not the same day, and inject them. And then I wait until they're healed, right? 3-4 weeks to do it again. But it's been a big shift in my practice. It probably took me 10 years to feel like I can do all of that.
Maria, I love that you started the conversation with fascia and fundamental, like for us, like chiropractically, I'll share that, the exam for us always starts at the foot, ankle, and moving up that chain, and typically I'll find tremendous amounts of densification or fibrosis along that chain, and then go into the hip, like Dr. Wood said. We have to take care of them, metabolically, and they're not obese patients. They're ready for, reawakening their bodies and doing some healing. I'd love to hear, Ashley. I know you're doing a lot of work with one of the premier hip specialists in the world. If you're still with us, I'd love to hear how it's going for you in relationship to the hips. Anything new?
Since I've been texting him, like, what the hell? We use diagnostic ultrasound all day, every day in our clinic. So I try to get an accurate depth of what target tissue I'm dealing with based off the ultrasound, and select my parameters based off that. And for some people, we have to use quite a bit of pressure to get the depth that we want. But contrary to the example, I actually do a lot of my positioning of the therapy source anteriorly, because most of the labral tears are anterior superior. So I tend to get into more like the anterior hip. And also a lot of those patients have anterior soft tissue structures that need treated. So we treat kind of into that anterior capsule, and those kind of pectineus and all the areas that get nice and junky with people who have intra-articular pathology. But we primarily are targeting a lot of the greater trochanteric pain syndrome stuff, the hamstring pathologies, a little bit of, like I said, anterior hip. For some people, the 30 millimeter depth is fine to get kind of capsular or to the joint level. For some, it's not, and that's okay too. But yeah, we're cranking with it. And we, similar to, I think I mentioned it on a previous one, that we prep the tissue or prep the area with the shockwave treatment, do the PRP injection, give them about anywhere from 10 to 14 days to just kind of chill, let that start to cook and do its thing, recover from the injection process, all of that. And then we restart our therapy and restart the use of the shockwave.
Ashley, I'm curious because you have the other therapy source too, as far as FPL. Is there any benefit as far as benefit is to doing it more superficial? Because that one only goes 20 millimeters, right?
Yeah.
Do you use it to treating that fascia area? Are you
Yeah.
doing it in
Yeah,
layers?
especially like lateral chain stuff. We're using that a ton. So a lot of our like lateral hip pain patients we're treating with the pinpoint unit over, again, we use diagnostic ultrasound. I know where where the tissue I'm going after is as far as like any sort of gluten tears or damage in that tissue. And we'll do that statically there. And then a lot of times we'll switch to the linear device and we'll treat that whole lateral fascial chain and through the IT band dynamically, moving the unit and using I like to use the ramp mode and just fluctuate those frequencies. So I kind of think of it like almost like a myofascial massage, like a deep myofascial massage. And because you get that wider zone, it's more comfortable than doing that like focal pinpoint. And it seems to be the combination of the two seems to work really well for those patients. Again, a lot of times pain modulating, restoring range of motion, getting them to be able to then participate in the follow-up exercises or interventions we're trying to work on.
Nice.
Yeah.
I did it like 2 weeks ago and got amazing results on IT band. Amazing. Like over the top.
Awesome.
But I had something to ask everyone.